I want to go ahead and just get Pat up here right away. I don't even want to chitter chatter. Pat is incredible, so honored. And give it up again for Liam. Wow, Liam, that was an incredible interview. Zeely, give it up for Zeely again too, please. Woo! That was such a good interview, honestly. Some funny parts too. I love it. I feel like I'm at a comedy show. I'm at a podcast. It's awesome. It's really learned a lot though.
Mike.
I know. Hi. Who all in here are artists? Okay. Amazing. Who are industry? Amazing. Who's community? Just like in general, just here to support or learn more. Cool. Awesome. Is anybody here in tech too? A little bit? Cool. Amazing. Again, so glad to have all of you here. Thank you for being here. Okay. Well, Pat, I would like you to introduce yourself. I think you'll do a better job of talking about who you are and all of the incredible things you have done in this community and the music industry itself.
Gracious. I'm Pat. That's about it. That's really the long and short of it. Yeah. No, I run a organization called Austin, Texas Musicians. We're a advocacy nonprofit and a service nonprofit. We're two different nonprofits, and we've been around about 6.5 years now, trying to support the 6,000 plus Central Texas musicians that we serve.
And you're also a musician yourself.
That is correct. Yes, I am a musician as well. So thank you. Yeah.
And just an incredible person.
Well, that's
such an incredible person.
Yeah. We'll see what God says at the end.
I met Pat through advocacy through the city, the Music Commission.
Sure.
So there is in Austin a music commission. Did we all know that? Do we know there is a music commission at the city?
He's one of the music commissioners.
Oh yeah, what do you know? One of the music commissioners, Scott Strickland, is here. It's an incredible space if you're interested in policy and reform, and it's open to the public, so artists can come. The meetings happen the first Monday, right, of the month.
That's correct.
Yep, and it's a really inspiring place to learn more. So I've met you through that, and Pat had a huge, if not the entire hand in the Live Music Fund, which is now a part of the Elevate grant.
Yeah, a different grant, but yes.
Which grants again? Sorry.
Well, there's the Live Music Fund, the Elevate, Thrive, and the Nexus grants are all part of the grants that come from hotel occupancy taxes.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to right off the bat start talking about artist advocacy and policy, because you have so much to say and so much experience in that. So Pat, for you, how has Austin, Texas musicians worked to shift policies around artist pay and protections? And through all the work you've done, what victories have you all seen? And how long have you been doing it?
Well, about 6.5 years now. We had our very first meetings back in 2019 around a little table over at Same Sky Studios. Brandon was there, and
nice.
And we our first project was to work. I say lobby, but really we worked collaboratively with City Council to, pull a portion of hotel occupancy taxes to hot tax, which we now call the Live Music Fund, but we had to actually get musicians out to vote on this thing in November of that year to actually make this thing a reality. And it was then that we realized musicians really probably have the largest voting block in this city, bigger just from our cursory count, bigger than the fire and police unions put together. So when we're able to activate those musicians towards a goal, it's very powerful.
Yeah, art as activism, so powerful. So what victories have you seen?
Yeah, sure. So, there's the LMF, of course, and that is continually evolving. Mr. Strickland over here is very involved in, many working groups, and reimaginings of how the Live Music Fund works. If anyone's aware, we have sort of what's called the creative reset happening here in town right now, with all the grants being moved out from under economic development under a new department called ACME, Arts, Culture, Music, and Entertainment. But beyond the LMF, we managed, I guess, during the pandemic, we were able to get $6 million out to musicians and $5 million out to venues.
Amazing. Round of applause for that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. That took a lot of showing up at City Hall in masks and bullhorns and yelling. And, since then, we've also created a city standard pay rate of $200 per musician for all city-sponsored performances.
Which is huge.
Thank you,
because it went up in, 40 years?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah. I mean, it's still unchanged in other realms and other areas.
It was at the beginning.
But, if you're a venue and you participate in the Live Music Fund, you've got to adhere to that city standard pay rate when you pay musicians, so, yeah.
Amazing. So you've had a lot of success with policy. Where do you think the biggest gaps still are when it comes to how Austin supports musicians from your perspective?
Sure. With Austin, there's so many things we could do. I think I will say this: we're probably a little more progressive in this realm than just about any other place in the country as far as some of these things. The Live Music Fund, it's the first ever sustainable public fund like this for musicians anywhere. This doesn't exist anywhere else. A city standard pay rate does not exist anywhere else. So, I take meetings with New York and LA and Chicago, and they're like, what the hell are y'all doing down there? How does this stuff work? And so there's a lot of value to that. At the same time, we have affordability issues here that are continuing to not change. We've got issues downtown with parking and safety and all sorts of things. So there's quite a bit still to be done. And then on the state and federal levels, that's a whole different story as well. So,
because me, when I got involved, I was invited by Deborah at the Statesman, and she was like, you have to come to this music commission meeting. What they're talking about is so important, and there needs to be artists here. And so for me, I had someone personally activate and ask me to come. How do you think independent artists can plug into existing advocacy efforts like the Music Commission or like Austin, Texas musicians? How can they plug into advocacy efforts or policy reform work happening right now?
Well, there's so much to be done. I'll give another example, if I may. Just on the federal level, a couple of years ago, we saw that there was a songwriter out of Nashville called George Johnson, who decided that he noticed that the mechanical royalty rates for physical products, CDs and vinyl, had been frozen since 2006 at 9 cents per unit, and he was like, what's going on with this? So he started to kind of raise a ruckus about this, and with a couple of entertainment attorneys and ourselves, we were able to get our local Congressman Lloyd Doggett involved, take it up the chain to Congress and stir the pot a little bit. And the great thing about music is that it's kind of this bipartisan across the aisles thing. Everybody wants to look cool by helping out music, so we can get a lot of politicians involved. And the next thing you know, we've got a meeting with the U.S. Copyright Royalty Board, and we're able to raise that rate from 9 cents per unit to 12 cents per unit with a cost of living increase over 5 years. I know it doesn't sound like much, but it showed us that when we see these things and when we're able to mobilize musicians and songwriters and artists towards a specific goal, we can make a difference. The weird thing that many people don't know is that songwriters are the only working class in the United States that have their rate of pay dictated by the federal government. So with streaming, with royalty rates, those things are decided in hearings every 2 years at the U.S. Copyright Royalty Board level, and the folks that show up and purport to represent songwriters, well, who's sitting on those boards? Spotify, YouTube, all those guys. So really, it just takes a concerted effort to kind of organize and galvanize those voices to show up and ask for what we want. And we usually get it. We just have to show up and do it,
Absolutely. I think that's really powerful. Can you talk a little bit more, too, about the hot tax? Because I find that so interesting that and even talk about how you decided to focus on that and why. Because some people, I don't think, realize what hot tax is and what it plays within the city structure.
Yeah, the effort actually predates me a little bit. So if I can give a little bit of boring history, we had our first ever music census. I think the first one of those really in the U.S. happened here in 2015, I believe. And out of that became what the Mayor Adler's omnibus plan. And then in 2017, a visitor impact task force said, well, let's look at ways to kind of put some of this into action. And they said, maybe all these available hotel occupancy taxes, that were created, built on the backs of musicians and artists. This entire tourism industry and resulting economy was built on that brand, right? That we're the live music capital of the world. So, it finally came, to a point where, this idea was sitting there and it just needed somebody to kind of take it across the finish line. And then we got guys like Brandon here who did a ton of work around, like, what does artist fair pay look like? What can we, do as far as, helping, where can we make a difference? If it's not, and I'll just be honest here, venues can't pay artists more. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
They're struggling too.
They're absolutely struggling.
Absolutely,
more than ever. They're just, since the pandemic, venues have to pay an additional 300% on insurance because of, there's, I think during the pandemic, all the insurance companies fell off, and so there's like 2 or 3 left that can, basically dictate whatever the rate's going to be. So venues are struggling just as much as artists ever were. So we got to think outside the box as far as what our solutions are, and things like the Live Music Fund, looking at corporate sponsorships and things like you guys are starting to do is where it's at. The whole village has to come together and support this thing that we call art.
Absolutely, I agree. So I'm gonna shift a little bit to like tools and tech and transparency a little bit, because I'm really curious to get your thoughts on some of this. So how important is transparency when it comes to things like festival payouts, grant distribution, and government arts funding? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I feel like I should pass the mic to Scott here.
We can, Scott. We can.
It's we have found time and again that let me just say transparency is so important. There's not always, I think everybody wants the same goal, but how we get there together is not always, we're not always on the same page. And that's a very diplomatic way of saying that some people aren't playing fair. And, we need to make sure that the way grants are distributed, who's being selected for these grants, the guidelines around the grants, all those things are transparent and fair and equitable, and I think some of the work we've gotten into the last 3 years around this stuff has been, a little bit exhausting, to be honest, but we got to keep showing up and doing it, because it's not like that problem's ever solved. You take your eye off the ball for 1 minute, and things, go to hell again. So we just got to keep staying in the fight. Yeah.
Yeah. So you would say that Austin should have more public accountability?
Yes, I would say so. I think, you see you'll go on the city website and see the dashboards, and this is who the grant served and these things and that kind of stuff. But then there's another layer. And that layer is, 800 pages long, Scott? Is that right? And Scott's going through a lot of that data right now to figure out where, let's say, some of the shortfalls are happening. So Yeah. So let's give it a big round of applause, I think, for Scott's work.
Yes.
I
No,
think so.
amazing. Scott's doing
that
some
is
great work.
Exhausting work, so. Yeah.
Seriously.
And thankless work.
Yes. So let's get a little positive here. What are the positive things you're seeing in your work, being involved in the artist community? What's some optimistic points that you love? Yeah, tell us.
Absolutely,
Let's talk about that, because I think that's important.
Well, for me, this is the greatest thing in the world that I've been able to do, doing this work the last few years. I can't imagine doing anything else, and I think that a musician-run advocacy organization for musicians it never existed before we decided to do this crazy idea, and we're kind of making it up as we go along. But it's been so gratifying, and I can tell you about some of the stuff we're working on now. That's pretty inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just yesterday morning, we've been working with the old historic Doris Miller Auditorium on the east side. If anyone knows Doris Miller, that was built in the 20s to house black servicemen coming home, and then over the years they hosted Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong, Nat King Cole, all these amazing acts. And now it's, it could use some love, and so we got a grant from the Austin Parks Foundation to improve sound lighting and acoustics. And I was just over there yesterday morning with the City of Austin's electrical engineers to kind of start sussing out how to move this thing forward. That's going to happen this year. We're working on a downtown plan this year to bring musicians back downtown with a creative hub that's probably going to happen at Central Presbyterian.
Love
literally
that place.
right there. That creates sort of a community space where musicians say, if you got a gig at 9, but sound checks at 6, you got a free, safe, sober place to hang out, shoot off your marketing and booking emails.
Oh my gosh.
We're working on potentially a free parking solution that I can't say too much more about, but we're pretty close with that. And then something we piloted a couple of years ago with the Downtown Austin Alliance. It's called our Gig Buddy program, and if you see the guys in the red shirts and the khakis walking around downtown, they will meet you at your car, provide safe cartage, escort, and setup to and from gigs. We've got some challenges with that right now as far as their staffing goes, but just earlier today, I was with the Downtown Austin Alliance. Figuring out how that's going to work. I've been in high-rise buildings all damn day long, so I just want to go hang out with my dog. I love being here, though. Don't get me wrong. Yeah.
Well, thank you for all the dedication you have put into this. That's amazing. How can, just so everybody here and everybody listening on the live stream, hello.
Oh my God.
Oh yes, there's cameras everywhere. You're on camera. How can musicians get involved with you guys and what you're doing?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, besides the advocacy stuff, and that's the C4, we're a 501c4 organization, but we're also now a 501c3, which is all about the service end. And so just yesterday we had a day-long education event with panels on marketing, management, touring that Scott spoke on, sync licensing, music publishing and distribution, and legal, which was our last panel, but always should be the first thing artists think about with any of this stuff. And then every month we have our night shift event that we've been doing since before the pandemic in 2020, and we're doing that now every first Tuesday of the month over at Pershing Hall, and it's air conditioned. We finally moved it indoors from all the Cosmic and Radio Coffee places, and it's just a great way for musicians to, I think the last one we had 60 or 70 people come out, and it's a great way for musicians to come out and meet each other, civic leaders, nonprofit partners, industry pros. We've seen bands come out of these things, sync deals happen. So you guys, please come join us. Mike, you were at the last one, and we did a little bit of an impromptu open mic. You played at that one.
I
and it was
did. I
fantastic,
have
yeah.
not played in 5 years,
so
and I
great.
played on the piano. It was insane. That was awesome.
Loved it, yeah. So,
Oh man, can we just say, like, how incredible is that feeling, like performing? I feel like that feeling of giving that energy out. I talked to Scott about this today when I was telling him how I started in music at such a young age, and even when I started in 2nd grade, just like that feeling of giving and receiving and how powerful it is. And then in the work, we've been seeing the power of art and advocacy, and I think it's just beautiful, all the work you're doing, and
Thank you.
it's empowering, and I think we all want to just see artists empowered, right?
Yeah. And it's a matter of thinking outside the box. I'm going to put a guy on the spot here, but Brandon over here runs Good Wolf Entertainment and has started to look at like how
stickers on my car.
How we can sort of change the narrative around ticketing so that ticketing is a little more affordable, and we're taking the power away from the Live Nations and Ticketmasters and things like that. So kudos to Brandon for kind of these revolutionary ideas around that.
Amazing. So I'm gonna bring it back to, because you brought up the Austin Parks and Rec, and so I dug a little about Austin Parks and Rec in my research, and I think they were the last ones to try to push the increased pay for South by.
That's correct.
Yeah, which I know you guys, the Music Commission was also a huge part of that. A lot of people were a part of that. And, I just thought it was really interesting and powerful learning about, the fact that Austin is public and South by Southwest is private. And so what the Austin Parks and Rec were bringing up was the fact that Austin has in their power to withhold certain things.
Correct. Yeah.
Possibly,
if they have interest in doing that.
If they have interest in doing it.
Right.
But it's interesting, right?
Sure.
Austin as a city gives permitting and parking and venue. I mean, the list is very long on what they give.
Yes.
Because I don't know, a lot of people might not know about this. I thought this was interesting. I know we all went through it or experienced it. Can you talk more about that time and like your experience with that and explain kind of what I'm saying more and what that looks like?
That's a tricky one. And when we do our impact report on our website, we don't talk about that one because that was let me just say there's a lot of David and Goliath sort of examples in this town, and that's one of them. South by had a lot of great local leadership, and whenever we make these big public spectacles around this stuff, we got to remember there's real people that are involved in these businesses that get kind of swept up in the conversation. But what we were able to do, and this is not something I share on our impact reports again, but early on I was able to get a meeting, just kind of a private sit-down lunch with some of the South by leadership, and they agreed, let's go ahead and raise the rate a little bit by, I think what artists were solo artists, they give them another $50, and bands they give them another $150 or something like that. And then a greatly expanded sort of benefit to the wristbands. There were all these other things artists could take advantage of with the wristbands. So we got that done, but then the impetus became that the parks board decided, well, we want to take it a little further, and there was some conversation on the national level with an organization out in New York that was putting the pressure on because they had a big sort of media presence. And I found, and this is just a hard thing to talk about, but I found that when you take these private solutions public and you continue with the public shaming, the doors just get shut in your face. I know it's we want to think that more sort of public pressure is going to help open these doors, but it ends up closing them in a lot of instances. And we found that, you can't really dictate what a private business does, especially we found on the city level. There were some council members that were interested in taking this forward, and then there were some that were just like, we're not touching this with a 10-foot pole. So God bless. I don't know what else to say about that. You know, we did what we can, and I think we've learned that with certain instances and certain sort of corporate interests, you've got to kind of work your way in the back door and try to find where those conversations.
Inside, yeah,
exactly.
But if you can answer, but what is your like personal perspective? Like, what did you think about that thought process of like the city being a public and South by being private, like, and what they were calling for?
Sure.
Like, what did you think it was viable?
At the end of the day, our phrase would be "pay me, bitch." You know, we want artists to get paid.
Woo! That's right.
You know, that's the long and short of it. You know,
amazing. That's what I wanted to hear.
Not calling anyone out, and we appreciated that some of the South by leadership was able to work with at that time. But in every realm, in every aspect, artists should be getting paid. And again, Liam, thank you for making sure that your artists over at Tequila 512 had some value out of that transaction, because we see still all the time, you know, there's artists that, you know, think that they should just work for free or are being asked to work for free, and we've got to change the narrative around that you know, we contribute so much to this economy here in Austin, and but oftentimes we are not seen as a viable workforce, you know, because we don't receive the same benefits that other workforces do. That narrative is going to change.
Absolutely, yeah. What was it, 1.6 billion last year? The creative economy brought in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
South by 377,000, or not 377 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Truly.
So, a few more questions,
yeah, please,
if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll do a fun one.
I'm feeling.
I know.
My lips are numb, and I'm just.
Thank you, MJ, for providing the lovely drinks.
Thank you.
So, if you could wave a magic wand, Pat, and create one new piece of infrastructure or legislation to support musicians, what would it be for?
Well,
like a dream. If they were like, yes,
absolutely.
Let's do it.
Sure, I think that we saw that with the mechanical royalty rate for physical product, we were able to change that. So I think there is an opportunity to change streaming rates. I know this is a crazy pie in the sky idea, but we know it can happen when we get, you know, the proper voices mobilized, when we're able to kind of collect all that feedback and funnel it in the right ways. So every 2 years, these hearings come up at the Copyright Royalty Board, and we need to talk about streaming, you know, if there is a way, you know, because I think probably, would you agree with me, Liam, that more than anything, that's probably, you know, devastated our industry for the last, I would say, 15 years or so. It's changed the game for everybody. Nobody's making money in the same ways they used to be. So you got to be back out on the road. You got to sell merch, you know, all this kind of stuff more than ever. It's just impossible.
Yeah. Okay. So higher royalty rates.
I would say on streaming, if we can make a difference there, that would be a dream. But then, you know, looking at other areas where we can make a difference. If we can't make a difference in the way artists are paid, maybe we can offset some of the, you know, other costs with other services. We just had to deal with this new Paseo high-rise development coming in on Rainey Street. Imagine that, they're doing a high-rise development on Rainey.
What? Another high-rise?
But the cool thing about these guys was that they are offering 20 free rent for a year artist in residence units. So we had all of our artists show up and sign up for this program, and I think they're going to announce probably next month.
They seem really great.
Yeah,
too,
so
like really good people.
Anywhere that the corporate community can realize we're a part of this community, you know, we can contribute to the well-being of the, you know, artists in Austin, and think of solutions where they can contribute is where we want to be. So
amazing. Well, is there anything else you would like to say? I would love to open up to questions if anybody has questions for Pat. But is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
Oh God.
Or touch on, or something you think artists should know?
Let's see. I would say don't start a music nonprofit. It's not the most lucrative career move. No, I'm kidding. It's very rewarding. But no, I just love to hear from anybody who's got some questions.
Joe, can you, or actually, oh yeah. Does anybody have some questions for Pat? Oh, okay. Gabe.
Hey, I'm Gabe. I'm the CPO of Prosper XO, and I just had a question about like what can the average person do that is most impactful to contribute to these causes?
Sure, like a non-artist or
Yeah, just an average person, like what on the street.
Well, I would say, go to shows, really. Bottom line, support art, find ways you can support artists, buy their merch, buy their music directly from them, like Liam said. In any instance where there's, you just find an artist that you enjoy and try to see if there's ways that you can support them, I would say. Would you have anything else to say? Matt? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's Scott.
Scott Strickland, everyone.
Thanks. I mean, as an artist, I would say that it's just good to like Pat was saying, go to a show, help out with, buy some merch, tell your friends what how cool this band is, and no matter if they have 12 shows in a month or if they have one show a year, like just get your friends to go and show up and all that stuff, because it definitely helps a ton. To do that. If as far as like advocacy stuff goes, if you're wondering about that, it's one of the secret things I think that Brandon would also probably agree with, and I know Pat agrees with this too, is that the city is very responsive to public pressure in a way that no other city I think is. So if they like hear something about something being negative or whatever or something, they're just like, oh, we got to fix this like now, because we don't want it to escalate, because if it escalates, it's really bad for them for whatever reason. But yeah, so if there's an artist that's telling you to advocate for something, trust them and advocate for it.
Does anybody else have any questions for Pat?
You had one back there?
Oh,
Yeah.
MJ.
No?
Also a musician.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. I may have missed if it was brought up, but I was in a progressive metal band for a little while.
Yeah.
Not any longer.
Nice.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we were kind of struggling with was finding support in terms of getting access into gigs. So what are some of the easily accessible routes that a musician or a band could get information or support here in Austin?
Yeah, that's a great question. As far as, would you say as far as booking support, or as far as just support with resources and services and things like that?
Booking support could be a big thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Even just, information as to where you could find information about something you're trying to find.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I would say the Texas Music Office is a great resource for a large database of music-related businesses. We always like to think of ourselves as kind of the welcome mat for Austin musicians who have just come to Austin, because we work very closely with all the other music nonprofits. I know a lot of people would say live music capital of the world, that's a bunch of baloney, but the thing that exists in Austin that's special, that does not exist anywhere else, is nowhere else do we have a organization that supports health care for musicians, or mental health care for musicians, or housing assistance for musicians, or Screams at City Hall for musicians like we do. So all these resources that we have here are really unique and really special. And so we try to sort of pull together a lot of that information for folks. And we're simple to find. We're ATX Musicians on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and atxmusicians.org for the website. Yeah. But as far as, what you're talking about, I think as far as booking and access to some of those different services, it's kind of hunt and peck. Scott, I know you work with Annie, A&J Presents. I know you've been through a few different sort of booking agents and managers, and I mean, would you like to speak to that process? I mean, you might have more information
I could
than I do
talk
on
more
that. Yeah,
about
please.
it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I think first of all, Pat is bringing up an incredible point about Austin, which is another positive, optimistic
Absolutely,
aspect of
yeah,
what we have here. I mean, we have organizations like HAM, the Health Alliance of Austin Musicians, which is the insurance you're talking about, and they help with housing as well, or
Yeah, Home.
foundation communities.
Home, actually, housing opportunities for musicians
Right.
and entertainers.
And then we even have TALA, which is
Correct.
like
Yeah,
legal.
we love those guys.
Yeah, TALA is
Texas
amazing.
Accountants and Lawyers for the Arts. They do a free legal clinic once a month.
And then we have the Sims Foundation, which helps with mental health. I've had my therapist for 7 years, either for zero or very low cost. So we have incredible resources. So to that, looking into organizations, MJ, just also that works with music. Like, honestly, HAM has helped me through so much. They even visited me when I was in the hospital for a while, and they asked me what I needed. And if they couldn't help me, they found somebody who could. So, number one, reaching out to organizations that are advocating or working with musicians is a great resource just to tap into. But then also, as an artist, I think what Liam was talking to is how important it is, right, to become in our power, right, and just use ourselves, network, go to networking events, meet other bands, talk to them. They're going to tell
Big
you about
point. Yeah,
booking
definitely.
agents that they've worked with, or I've honestly, for me as an artist, I love doing it, so I book shows myself, I have for the duration of how long I've been an artist. Go right to venues, right? If you're doing it yourself, right? Just the cool thing about Austin too is so many people want to help, and they want
so true.
to talk with you, and they want to connect. So go straight to venues too, and I mean in person. Go to shows there, meet the door guys, ask who works there, get involved as much as you can, and really lean on each other as artists, because that's really where all the power lies, is ourselves, and leaning on each other and leaning on these networks that have been built to support us. So absolutely, but everything you said too.
Yeah,
In terms of the organizations.
Thank you. Yeah, this last Friday, I had this 4-hour lunch with this old timer named Bill or Bruce Wilenzik. I don't know if anyone here knows Bruce. Yeah, right. And this guy, was one of the key figures in the Armadillo World headquarters. Started the Armadillo Christmas Bazaar. Has been behind music and downtown commissions, planning the City Hall rebuild and the airport and all this stuff. And his key to all this stuff was just continuing to show up where he wanted to be. With the Armadillo, he just started showing up, and until he was just indispensable in making sure that he was part of the scene. And then all these opportunities started to open up for him, and then he's just been able to create this magic over the years by creating what he called a culture of we. He never tries to divide people, but always tries to build community where he can. So
yeah, and I think that is a great place to kind of close on in the fact that I think and you can speak to this if you think so too, but like one of the most important parts about being a creative is building up your support network, and is connecting with your fans, and is building a support network around you regardless of what's going on, right? Because that is really where the source is, right? And I've noticed with creativity, it's so amazing that once you start really following that path and that passion, people are going to gravitate towards you. Once you start really putting yourself out there, putting yourself in places, starting to learn, starting to network, it's really exciting, One last question, I guess. So, because I know I've met, even with vendors and local businesses, I call them hobby artists, right? Or closet artists, because they're incredibly talented. They're just amazing, but they're like, oh, well, I just do this for myself, But once you put them in an environment, for example, the shows I was putting on, these small businesses, putting them in environment with people and with networking, with resource, they just open up, right? Truly. And connect and collaborate and network. What is one piece of advice you could give artists that are like, yeah, but I don't really want to talk to anybody, or like, yeah, that's great, there's all these resources, but like, I don't really necessarily want to reach out. Is there any advice you could give to those type of artists?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, that's a great point. I think that by and large, artists are, I've learned this over the last few years because I'm one of them. Artists are by and large neurodivergent, some of us, have a difficult time, interacting in public. I used to think like, oh yeah, these rock stars wearing their sunglasses in public, blah, blah. That's oftentimes just because they can't handle the stimulus. They can be on stage and perform, but the second you put them in a crowd of people to talk to people, it's they start freaking out. But I think the thing to realize with all of that is that your uniqueness is what makes you an artist. Your uniqueness is what helps you stand out, and we're in a community in Austin where people want that. They gravitate towards that, and so all those things that you feel, you don't feel confident about, or you feel like are shortfalls, are actually your strengths oftentimes. And so if you just try to be your authentic self, and in any room you're in all the time, people are going to respond to that, because more often than not, you have this idea that people are, kind of in this other realm, and they're high functioning, and they know what they're doing. Nobody knows what the fuck they're doing in life, honestly, is the secret. And so everybody can kind of come together in that way, because they see you as a talented artist, and they want a piece of that. They want to be a part of what you're doing. So
amazing. So lean into your strengths.
Yeah, I would say
amazing.
So.
Pat, such a great conversation. Thank you for taking time to do this and be in another high rise.
I know. But that kava helped so much that my vertigo is not even so bad now. Yeah.
Another question.
Yeah, Brandon.
Do you want?
I wanted to, the Acme department that's coming, can you share a little bit about that from the inside of the room?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw Scott slap his head. So I guess the context here is that, music, cultural arts, the airport's music program, a bunch of this other stuff has been under the arm of economic development for many years. And the new city manager that's come in, I think has realized that there are some shortfalls, as we've talked about with the grant programs, some negative community feedback, and decided possibly because Scott and Ray Price and I met with him on the morning of December 31st at 8 a.m. Anyway, he decided that, there needed to be some changes. So they've taken all those programs out from under EDD and created a new department that's brand new, and it's called Arts, Culture, Music, and Entertainment. And so they're in the process right now of what they call the Creative Reset. And they've been doing a lot of focus groups, taking a lot of input from around the community, doing a lot of deep listening to try to figure out, how to reboot these programs in a way that's both equitable, but also transparent and efficient, and make sure that the money gets into the hands of the artists that really need it. So we're really all about that process. We actually hosted a musician focus group of about 25 people with them just last week to try to give some feedback on this stuff. And I think they're looking at probably late July or August to relaunch these programs. I think that's a little ambitious. So I'm thinking it may be just a few more months, and then we'll see the Live Music Fund come back around for the third round, and the Elevate and Thrive and the Nexus programs, the grants come back probably better than ever. So I hope that answered your, and I'm happy to talk offline, Brandon, anytime. So yeah.
Thank you for all the work you've done, Pat. Seriously.
Thank you. I'm so excited to see what you guys are doing. Thank you.
Yay, awesome. Well, thank you. No more questions, right?
Actually, I have...
okay.
Yeah,
sorry about that.
No. Thank you. I was just wondering if there are any resources. So we got this show on the 28th with Jackie Benson's side project.
Right.
Jackie the Robot,
Yeah, yeah.
and our friend Party Wolf, his name's AJ, and like I'm throwing the event, like I rented the venue, I'm paying the artists, and my partner Adam, like his skill set, our skill sets are such that we can run events, like we've run block parties, had bands come through, did the whole, all set up, like did basically everything surrounding the event. I was wondering, are there any resources for people who can maybe throw events, can maybe subsidize, basically, like help out with paying for a venue, and then like meet us, like I could pay half, somebody else could pick up half the tab. Like I realized I could throw this event with Jackie and AJ at Vinyl Beauty Bar for like the cost of a PlayStation Pro. So I was like, I'm just gonna do this instead.
Yeah.
And get some artists paid. And I was just wondering if there's any resources where I could like maybe get some help with that, or if there are artists who can just kind of do everything around playing, if there are like just ways to subsidize shows, basically.
Absolutely. I'll say, Mike, I was listening to some of your music last night, and I love it. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
And yeah, I was just at Vinyl earlier today. Oddly enough, that's a great venue for stuff like this. The Live Music Fund is supposed to serve exactly what you're talking about, to create these events and things like that. But that's not the only resource out there. I know there's there's other grant programs. I almost want to lean over to the event management expert here and see if you have something to say about that, Brandon.
The office you just went to today, the Downtown Alliance, they've been releasing specific grants, I think, for $6,000 for
Have they
events.
really?
Yeah,
I wasn't aware of that.
They just
Okay.
released
What?
3 of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's
a
other
resource.
organizations that have programs like that. But Brandon, I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
I have an unfair advantage. I have an unfair advantage because Good Wolf got one of the grants.
Yeah.
So, we had a lot of resources to launch ideas that had no economic model. An event series for musicians who are in addiction recovery actively, like in a treatment center. How do you get them into a live music venue that serves alcohol, but not on that night when the venue's primary revenue stream is selling alcohol? How do you do that, right? And so we were able to launch an event series like that. It's kind of a continuation of the Music Cares Sober Jam.
Amazing.
We were able to kind of showcase with, there's a Springdale General is over at Springdale and Airport, and they were looking to create community, a sense of community at their complex, and we were able to do an event with them where the budget they had wouldn't have covered but a third of what we were trying to do there. Scott played the event, actually, and one thing I would say about that is that grant was able to subsidize the cost, where I didn't have to personally take a loss for that client to see the value in doing that event. They brought us back for East Austin Studio Tour. They're bringing us back again this fall and next spring. So that was the kind of thing that I think the grant was designed for, was to stimulate the economy. And then I'll just take this chance while I have the mic too, is to say that the other thing that grant did that was great, and the money comes and goes. You would be shocked at how fast that money goes in and out of the accounts. But what it did for me is there's this abundance of educational resources about things that I would go to ACC and take classes to learn about, like how to use Google Analytics and how to effectively market, put together a marketing campaign. What's going on in tourism in Austin, and how do I connect with that? What are the entities that are really the gatekeepers to do business with the associations that come to the convention? I have no idea about any of this stuff. I've been in Austin for 20 years. Like, that's a pretty incredible resource, the education that's part of that program. And then the third thing I would say is that, what did you call it? The city pay standard? Yeah. Like, that was an idealistic concept that lived in my head after running a talent agency for 10 years and then being a talent buyer for 10 years, is there's no freaking standards. Yeah. Like, there are reputable venues in this town that pay $60 or one, and I'm not naming names, but there's one I talked to last week that said, our musicians are happy to play for $20 and a couple beers. And I'm just like, that's absurd. Like, that is absurd. Pay them $0 because at least there's not a dollar figure that makes you question your value that hard. But as a company, you know, I do a lot of work with corporations, and it's like, well, I don't know. Is it hundreds? Is it thousands? Where do you evaluate? Where do you evaluate any musician? And that program really gave me a leg to stand on that said, well, okay, well, this is a standard, and it's not based on the previous standards, which really were flawed. The union pay rate was like $60 or something. And you're like, okay, well, like, that's outdated and it doesn't work. So that was huge. That was huge. And it doesn't have to be the law, but there has to be a standard for that. And so not only did did your advocacy create that policy, but then the Live Music Fund enforcing it actually forced my hand, although I would have loved, you know, didn't need much twisting, but it gave me a standard to operate off of. Okay, well, this is what we're going to do. You know, when I have a lot of money, we'll share it, but when I don't have a lot of money, I need something to set the bottom on that. Anyways, there was a lot of really, really great things. Apply for it because it's for independent promoters and musicians and venues. And I loved that there was a category for an independent promoter. That's where my company fell in. It's been a tremendous support. Yeah.
And thank you, Brandon. I'd like to mention to Mike that, so because I have personally just naturally been in events for a really long time, and when I moved out to Austin, I started a nonprofit called $3 Shows. We connected the arts community with the social issues community. Through that, I really started learning about sponsorship, right? And sponsorship decks, and really learning about the power of collaboration with local business. And I started really seeing local business wanting to directly sponsor artists. And honestly, that's where the beginnings of Prosper and that idea started. I mean, Prosper was inspired by a lot of what we've talked about tonight already. But something that I saw pretty quickly was there is a white space, right? But there is the need for it, right? And we see influencers today really, really using that really well, right? So I would say right now, you know, we're trying to build tools that, number one, can connect artists directly with sponsorship and legal protection and ownership and understanding of your data and analytics. But right now, in this moment, I would say reach out to local business. You know, there's so many businesses too. The shows that we would do for $3 shows, I mean, so many businesses wanted to feed musicians. They wanted to support them. I mean, I had Juice Land giving free juice, and, you know, so many people sponsoring artists directly. I've seen it so much now that I was like, oh my gosh, like, there's no way that every business will want to support artists. I can guarantee that on some level, even if it's just a small level. And maybe it's not because they're good people. Maybe it's because they want that direct-to-consumer marketing. Whatever it is, use it. Reach out to local business. Connect with local business. But 9 out of 10 times they want to support music. And we're already seeing so much of that with our early onboarding brands. They just want to be a part of it, you know. And one of our new team members, Sue, she was working for a brand, and now because she believes in artists so much, and it's kind of funny, she worked for a really big tech company that she's like, I feel so bad because this tech company was bought by Napster, and I just want to support artists because I saw that happen, right? So yeah, just not to go too deep into it, but there is that source right now without any tools. You know, just go to local business, see if they want to support your shows, your music, and 9 out of 10 times they will.
Real briefly, I'd just add to that, like, PNC Bank is great about those things. They've been doing a lot of series like this. Right now, Scott and Brandon and I are actually working together on Black Artist Rock, which HEB sponsored last year, and hopefully we'll do the same this year. And then they just launched a whole series of shows with the home organization. So there's a lot of businesses out there who want to step up. And I should also clarify one point with the city standard pay rate. A lot of that was Scott's work too, so I just want to give credit where credit was due. And then it started with Brandon. So it takes a village. You know, it really takes everybody kind of bringing those ideas together and pushing it forward. So. Yeah.
When's your show? So we all know.
It's on June 28th, 8 p.m., Vinyl Beauty Bar. It's going to be an awesome time. Party Wolf, which is my friend AJ. It's kind of like this Daft Punk kind of vibe going. And us, Obsolete Machines. We have been told we're kind of like a mix between the Dresden Dolls, 21 Pilots, and Radiohead. And, of course, Jackie and Jackie the Robot. So. She needs no introduction. She's amazing. She's amazing. I'm so stoked to be able to play on a bill with her. So yeah, come on out. Vinyl Beauty Bar, 628.
Yay! Thank you. Well, thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, guys. David, Joseph, thank you.